Hello, I'm a woman in my 50s with a lot of experiences to share. Looking back, I now realize that my life has been marked by constant challenges. Even when I hit my 40s, my journey continued to be full of unexpected twists and turns. But have you ever heard of someone whose life took a surprising turn? When I first heard that question, I initially thought it was an exaggeration. However, something truly extraordinary happened to me. I am living in a completely different reality. I believe the expression, "life is truly unpredictable," takes on its full meaning. I was born as the eldest daughter of an ordinary family, but one marked by its peculiarities. From the moment I was born, I felt I wasn't as welcome as a son would have been. Due to the social pressures of the time, my mother faced criticism for giving birth to a girl, and this led her to blame me for some of the family's problems. A year later, when my younger brother came into the world, my mother began treating me unfairly. The feeling of isolation was overwhelming, as I grew up unaware that I was being discriminated against compared to my brother and passively accepting these abuses. I always believed I had to give up anything good in my life in favor of my brother, whether it was clothes, food, or even a warm blanket for nights of sleep. On bitterly cold winter nights, my younger brother slept in a comfortable bed with quality blankets, while I huddled on a simple mattress with worn-out covers. While he attended a reputable private school, I didn't even dare dream of attending a technical school. My resentment grew every day, and my relationship with my family deteriorated. I deeply yearned for a proper education and persistently pleaded with my father to allow me to attend high school. It was the first time in my life that I was stubborn. "What is this?" my father asked. "Sending a girl to high school? Is our family wealthy enough for that? Why are you causing trouble by insisting on going to high school? Wasn't being educated up to elementary school enough, as was common in the old days? You should be grateful to your parents for the rest of your life instead of creating more worries. How dare you defy this? Your role is to stay quiet, work to pay for your stay, and eventually get married, understand? It's not like I chose to be born, to be honest." I was shocked that a father could say such words to his daughter. Moreover, I felt it was unfair to ask me to repay when I hadn't received anything grand in the first place. But back then, I had no choice but to give up on my dream of attending high school due to my father's reprimands. At the age of 16, I got a job in a textile factory. I worked during the day and studied at night, keeping it a secret from my family. My goal was to pass the high school equivalency exam and get my diploma. I didn't understand why studying had to be a secret, as if it were a criminal act. The pain of that time still lingers whenever I recall it. 3 years later, at the age of 19, I managed to pass the high school equivalency exam. I thought my life would change quickly, but I had to dedicate myself to studying after work, without anyone's help. It was a tough journey, but I believe it was the first time I felt I could achieve something on my own. From that moment on, I began to transform gradually. I decided not to accept the unfair treatment I received just because I was a daughter. One night, I left home as if I were running away, finally seeking my independence. It was 19 years of constant struggle. I chose not to live under the unjust rules imposed by my parents and sought a more equal and independent life. Despite the challenges I faced, I found satisfaction in this choice. After living alone for 2 years, I met my husband, from whom I eventually divorced during a complicated time in my life. At the time, I was working at a restaurant where he was the owner's sole heir. He always praised and encouraged me, recognizing my effort and dedication. It was the first time someone had praised me in that way, and I ended up falling in love with him. My husband had just finished his military service and was resuming his college studies. Although our dating relationship was less than a year old, we decided to get married in a simple ceremony and moved in together into my modest studio apartment. When my mother-in-law, who owned the restaurant where I worked, found out, her reaction was one of shock and fury. "How dare you lure my son away? Do you think I'll accept an ungrateful daughter-in-law like you? You can't have him, you better leave right now. And don't even think about receiving a salary, as you're causing trouble for my family. In that moment, listening to my mother-in-law's speech, I questioned why I was being blamed for everything. It wasn't me who seduced him, it was a mutual choice based on the love we shared. Does our love mean nothing to you? That's laughable, I said. My son is a college student, he could have chosen from many beautiful girls at college. Why would he want someone like you? Don't you understand reality? I'll show you who I really am. She rolled up her sleeves and indeed showed her true nature. I didn't have much, but she destroyed everything in my home. I knew she had this behavior, but I couldn't give up. Not only because I loved my husband but also because I was pregnant. Just as I was about to tell her about the pregnancy, my husband arrived. He heard the argument and tried to calm his mother. Mom, please stop this. It's my fault, I should have told you earlier. I'm sorry. Then stop this. Why did you choose to live with an opportunist like her? Do you think I raised you with difficulty to have a daughter-in-law like this? Matilda is a kind and good person. Would you prefer a snob? My husband asked. As I said, even though Matilda doesn't have much to show, I prefer her because she's kind. We're already legally married, and soon we'll have a baby. It's too late to turn back. A baby? This opportunist planned everything to destroy our family. Trapped my son with a baby. Is that baby really my son's? Yes, I'm sure. Even if you don't believe it, it's the truth. No matter how much you badmouth me, the father of this baby is your son. My mother-in-law collapsed on the floor, desperate. Of course, even after this incident, she continued to accuse me that my baby wasn't my husband's child. But what could she do when her own son affirmed that it was? That's how my unexpected marriage began. My husband said we'd throw a party when he was working and making money, but since he was still an unemployed student and I had cut ties with my parents, I wasn't in the mood for a big wedding. I told him I was fine and happy this way, but it was a lie, despite my sincerity. As part of the agreement to accept our marriage, I was forced to move into my mother-in-law's house. From that point on, even during my pregnancy, she overloaded me with household chores and work at the restaurant. She always scolded me, claiming that since I was guilty of seducing her son, I had no right to complain about the work. I went through tough times, both physically and mentally. Many times, I cried alone, wondering why my life seemed so hard. However, I managed to endure it all because I had my husband by my side, holding my hand. So, I lived this way for over 5 years, dedicating my best years to raising our daughter and managing household tasks for my mother-in-law while also working at the restaurant. One day, my mother-in-law saw her world crumble due to a Machiavellian scheme orchestrated by an impostor. Oh my God, how could this happen? How could they deceive me so treacherously? Son, what do we do now? Where can we go? My husband tried to calm the situation and said, Mom, don't torment yourself like this. It's not your fault. I have some modest savings, and I believe we can rent a decent place to live. Let's not make a big drama out of it. However, the tension only grew, and she angrily retorted, How dare you offend me, my son? All of this happened because of your wife. If she came from a respectable lineage, we would have a refuge and resources to rebuild. My indignation could have erupted at that moment, but instead, I sighed deeply. My daughter was still very young at that time, and I ended up accepting the situation. We ended up renting a modest 2-bedroom apartment. My mother-in-law fell ill and was confined to bed, while my husband took on 2 jobs to ensure our livelihood. I also started doing work from home to help with expenses. So, we led a hard life for over a decade. The love between my husband and me, which had once seemed unshakable, had long disappeared. However, I believe this was the reality for many couples, and I was willing to endure anything as long as I could raise our daughter with dignity. I had been subjected to degrading treatment in my childhood and was determined not to repeat that story with my daughter. Therefore, even if it meant giving up comforts, I was willing to do anything to fulfill her wishes. However, my mother-in-law seemed to have no tolerance for me. "What about the money?" she would question. "You spend everything on your daughter, but what do you do for your husband? He works tirelessly to support the family, and you only have eyes for your daughter. If you came from a wealthy family, my son wouldn't be going through this. He suffers because of you, don't forget that." "What are you insinuating?" I replied, my temper flaring. "My husband suffers because of me? You have no boundaries." And my mother-in-law shot back at me with a look of hatred like I had never seen before that day. Then she began a wave of destruction, breaking everything within her reach except for valuable items in our house. I took my daughter far away from there and sighed, hearing the crash of things breaking in the background. After exhausting her rage, she claimed to be sick and retreated to her bed. My husband, who used to be my ally, began to demand more attention for his mother. Gradually, we grew apart, and he started finding fault with me even when I wasn't in the wrong. Despite all the difficulties, I held on to hope to preserve our marriage, especially for our daughter. I continued to work hard to ensure our subsistence. Finally, when our daughter entered high school, we managed to acquire a spacious enough house to accommodate us. One day, as we settled into our new home, my mother-in-law, in her best mood, remarked, "Thanks to my son, you're enjoying all this comfort. It's not like you could afford a house like this on your own. You should be grateful to my son." As I looked out at the world through the window, I felt like I was on top of the world. To acquire this house, I had saved every penny. However, a persistent feeling that all my efforts were directed solely for the benefit of her son never left me. But I had become so accustomed to it that I couldn't get annoyed anymore. Just when I believed things were settling down, I faced a disaster I could never have foreseen. As a result, I was forced down the path of divorce. Interestingly, my quality of life improved considerably. My then-husband, who worked in the sales department of a construction company, often used work as an excuse to go out with clients and get involved with other women. I didn't view it favorably, even if it was work-related. He frequently didn't come home and spent nights in unknown places. But whenever I expressed my dissatisfaction, he got angry with me. "Oh, come on. I'm just joking. Taking clients out is part of the job. They like to go to places where there are women. Why are you so uptight? After all, where did you buy that dress you're wearing? Look at yourself in the mirror, try to value yourself a bit instead of bothering me with such simple clothes." He seemed so dismissive that I didn't even want to go back home at that moment. My pride was wounded by someone with whom I had shared precious years. That night, as I washed my face, I didn't know if the water running down my face came from the tap or from my own tears. Then, one day, he came home completely drunk. The next morning, he called me in desperation, claiming he had forgotten a crucial contract at home, and ordered me to deliver the contract envelope to his workplace within minutes. Without even putting on a coat, I grabbed my purse and the envelope and, against my habit, called a taxi. Upon arriving at my husband's company in a hurry, I asked for him. He approached me with a look of disdain, as if he were ashamed of my appearance. "Arthur, what are you doing here?" someone approached my husband. "Didn't you say you had an important contract to sign? The president of that company is already here." "Yes, I know. I'll go there shortly." "Did you bring the contract?" "It seems like you left it at home, didn't you?" the person suggested. "Is this your wife?" "What are you talking about?" "She's a hired help. Here's the document. You can leave now." My husband introduced me as his servant, and without any hint of remorse, walked away. I stood there, paralyzed, with trembling legs. Then, I overheard the conversation between my husband and his colleagues. The president kept asking for him, "But what are you doing here? Who is this Lady Arthur? He must be well off, he even has a servant. I almost mistook her for his wife, a colleague said. I'm not rich. My wife has been busy lately. And look, how could I be with a woman like this? Look at how she dresses, what her hair is like. My husband spilled all of this, but he didn't stop there. She's just my maid. The humiliation was so overwhelming that I just wanted to disappear as quickly as possible. He left me utterly embarrassed. I returned home in tears and, as if in a trance, decided to visit a mall for the first time in my life. I bought some clothes for myself. However, my husband mocked me without any remorse. Just because you paint stripes on a pumpkin, it doesn't turn into a watermelon. How dare you spend money on mall clothes? Are you out of your mind? Return everything. You've embarrassed me at work. He was furious, but I didn't return the clothes. After that incident, my husband openly ridiculed me, saying I was ugly and looked like a beggar. His mother also got involved, claiming that her son had finally seen the truth and regretted not listening to her. I felt a boiling hatred inside me. While I could endure a lot, I couldn't bear it when my daughter witnessed all of this. They say the daughter follows the mother's destiny. I was worried that my daughter would face a life like mine. Then, one day, out of nowhere, my husband announced that he no longer wanted to continue with me and that if I wanted any money to rent an apartment, I should immediately sign the divorce papers. When I refused, he confessed to having a pregnant lover and said I should leave the house because he would bring her to live there. How could he be so heartless after betraying our marriage? I promised myself that I wouldn't leave, and he could manage 2 households if he wanted. I had worked too hard to earn this house, and I wouldn't allow another woman to take it. That's when his mother threw all my clothes in the trash, claiming that I was blocking her son's future and that I couldn't give birth to a son. My daughter witnessed it all when she came home from school. She saw, cried, and told me, "Mom, don't accept this. Don't get a divorce. Why should you endure this abusive treatment? You should just leave Dad, who's having an affair, and Grandma. I hate it when you just put up with it." My mother-in-law heard this and became furious. "You really raised your daughter well. Did she learn this from you when I wasn't around? Even now, you should reprimand the one having an affair. Just because she's pregnant, you're telling my mother to leave just because she thinks it's a son? That's right, you fool. You won't continue our family lineage. All of this happened because your mother got involved with a man she wasn't up to. Enough, I can't take it anymore. I'm going to ask for a divorce. This house is mine too. I invested a lot of money to buy it. I won't ask for the full value. Just give me half the value of the house and pay monthly child support for our daughter. You're greedy, aren't you? Well, then let's settle this legally. I'm just claiming what's rightfully mine. We'll settle this in court. Meanwhile, your lover's belly will keep growing." The mother-in-law butted in again. "Andrew, you don't need to worry. Besides, that foolish young woman next to her mother should leave along with her mother. Now, as you form a new family, you need to get rid of them." At that moment, I couldn't prevent my daughter from getting into the discussion. "Mom, I can't accept this. I'll go to your workplace and tell everyone what kind of people you're sheltering. These exploiters won't keep doing this." Immediately, Andrew retorted, "Who owns the money with which you were raised?" I couldn't bear to speak to my daughter this way. "Don't talk like that to Isabella. She didn't receive money from you for food or education. Andrew, you can be as unfair as you want. Let's move on." He countered, "As for me, I just need to sign the divorce papers." At that moment, I realized once again that when you need to fight, you must stand your ground. My ex-husband must have thought I would sign the divorce papers the way he wanted, and he was very surprised by my firm stance. I told him I wouldn't sign the papers until he gave me the money. I didn't know where he got the money, but that night he made a deposit into my bank account. That's how our divorce happened. Even though our marriage wasn't perfect, I felt empty. I went through a tough period after the divorce. However, I needed to work to support my daughter, who was preparing to go to college. Due to my lack of professional experience, finding a job was a tough task. That's when I saw an ad looking for a housekeeper. Despite my traumas, I had experience as a part-time housekeeper while my daughter attended private school. I decided to put aside negative feelings and signed up with a job agency. In the next 6 months, I worked as a housekeeper in daily or temporary jobs. Due to my efficiency and meticulousness, I gained recognition. During that time, the agency owner made me a special offer. Well, I wouldn't normally suggest this to someone inexperienced, but since you're an excellent professional, I'll tell you. Among our clients, there's one who's very demanding. He lives alone, and you'd only need to clean the house 3 times a week and prepare some meals. I've sent over 20 people, but he rejected them all. So, I'm asking you to become the regular housekeeper. I'll pay 3 times what you're earning now. 3 times what I was earning. I really needed it. My ex-husband was still paying child support, but I was always worried he might stop at any moment. My daughter would soon be in college, so I needed to save money for tuition. I agreed, no matter what happened. When I finally arrived at that house, I wished there were more things to clean. But it was impeccably clean, almost like a hotel. I was restless and started worrying that the payment was excessive for what I was doing. From that moment on, I intentionally created extra tasks for myself. I washed curtains and sheets, sterilized dishes under ultraviolet light, and cleaned the refrigerator. However, due to my speed, these tasks were completed in no time. Then, I went to the local market to buy groceries and started preparing meals. I had no idea about his preferences or how spicy the food should be. Nothing was easy from start to finish. But I tried to remember the compliments my daughter gave my cooking and based my meals on that, including a soup. I left everything organized in the freezer. As I was about to leave, I thought about the money I was receiving. Compared to the work, it didn't seem like enough. So, I wrote a letter and told him that if he wanted something specific to eat, I would make it. Just leave a request in the fridge, and when he returned, it would be ready. Contrary to my concerns, he didn't complain. I kept working, doing my best, but also inventing unnecessary tasks to justify the payment I was receiving. I did my best. Then, I noticed on the calendar in that house a date marked with a reminder. When I looked at the date, I realized it wasn't a day I was scheduled to work. What if it was a special date for someone? I began to worry that this person might need prepared food. So, I decided to anticipate the service and cook the day before. When I'm busy with a task, time flies without me noticing. I was in the kitchen when the homeowner returned. Sorry, I was cooking and didn't notice time passing. I'll finish up soon and leave. By the way, have you eaten? Do you want me to set the table for you? He replied, no, it's okay. But he was intrigued by the amount of food I was preparing. I had noticed the special date on the calendar, but then I realized he was coming back with grocery bags to prepare food for that day. At that moment, I questioned whether I had made a mistake and became confused about how to proceed. However, the client didn't say anything, just instructed me to finish the cleaning and leave. Then, he retired to his room. I was sure I would be fired, but that didn't happen. I continued working as usual. The next time I went, I found a note in the fridge, "Thank you for the meal." Seeing that note filled me with joy. After that incident, I continued cleaning the house and preparing meals with satisfaction. For the first time, I realized I genuinely enjoyed household chores. The following day when I returned to work, I found another note in the fridge. The amount of food is excessive. Please reduce. From that moment on, our communication was done through notes. Tonight's dinner was amazing. Just heat it before eating. Thank you, it was really delicious. I saw a flower vase for sale and bought it for the house, but if you don't like it, I can remove it. Because of the flower vase, the atmosphere in the house became more cheerful. He replied, "Thank you. I'm not good at taking care of plants, so please take care of the vase as well." I asked, "Do you like the vase? If not, I can remove it." Our communication continued this way. After 6 months, I started looking forward to going to work and not having to worry about what to cook. Am I laughing to myself? A strange feeling of happiness overwhelmed me. My daughter noticed and asked, "Mom, are you happy? Your face is so bright." I was surprised and told her I wasn't dating, but honestly, I didn't know what I was feeling inside. On a day when I went to work, the client seemed to have a cold. Although he told me to go, I couldn't leave a sick person alone at home. So, I went to the pharmacy and bought some medicine for him, as well as preparing chicken soup. I left a note in the fridge to remind him to take the medicine and eat the soup for a quicker recovery. The next day, I found a set of beauty products in the kitchen. I felt like I shouldn't accept gifts like that. So, I deliberately set the table and waited for the client. He seemed surprised to see me still at home when he thought I had already left. He stood at the door. Well, I thought I shouldn't accept gifts like this. But if I didn't take them and left them here, you might interpret it the wrong way. So, I stayed to tell you in person. He replied, "Oh, it's because you gifted me with your wonderful meals. How are you feeling?" I said, "I'm fine. I didn't think you would eat, so I set the table. If you don't want to, I can clean up and leave." He commented, "Actually, I'm quite hungry. Why don't you eat with me?" I was surprised and hesitated. How could I eat with a client? "It's all right. I think it's better for me to go home and eat with my daughter." He remarked, "Oh, you have a daughter. It must be nice to have a family member to eat with." I replied, "I'm sorry, but since I usually eat alone, no matter how delicious it is, I don't taste anything. I only eat out of obligation. It's been a long time since I shared a meal with my family." It was the first time I had dinner with my new boss. I had never had dinner with any man other than my ex-husband. I thought it might be awkward, but soon we were chatting animatedly. He was quite unlike any man I had known. On that occasion, I also found out that he was divorced. He was older than me and shared that he had suffered a lot when he was younger. He joked that all the women he met had left him. After that, women only got close to him because of his money, so he intentionally avoided a new marriage. When his mother-in-law, who lived with him, passed away, he regretted being alone for the first time. Then, as if he realized he had talked too much about himself, he suddenly asked me, "And your husband, what's he like? Would he be angry if he knew you had dinner with me?" I told him about my recent divorce due to my ex-husband's infidelity. It was an embarrassing story from my life. When I came to my senses, I apologized and got up to clear the table. He also seemed embarrassed and went to his office. The next day, when I went to work, there was a note in the fridge: "If you don't mind, could we have dinner together again, like yesterday? Food tastes better when we eat it together. I'm leaving this card for you to buy tastier ingredients. Please use it freely." Holding that card, I thought of all the possibilities. It would be a lie to say I wasn't flattered. But as a responsible housekeeper, it would be a scandal to get involved with the boss. So, after much thought, I told him I couldn't have dinner together anymore and left the card with a note in the fridge. I felt I should keep my distance and be professional at that moment. The next day, he called me, getting my number from the agency that referred me. I thought I would be fired, but unlike what I imagined, he confessed that he was romantically interested in me. I don't know how you'll react, but I need to confess my feelings. After hearing your story, my heart hurt like never before. Mr. Martin, as someone who has been married, I don't believe in a never. It's possible to feel this way now, but people change with time, and you might regret it, I replied. I'm no longer young, and I want to avoid regrets, he said. I've started to like you, but I want us to be a family. I want to have dinner with you and your daughter, go out on weekends. It's the first time I've felt like this in my whole life. Maybe it was because I sympathized with him too. In my mind, I didn't want to get hurt again, but my heart wasn't listening to reason. So, I ended up going out with him and my daughter a few times. I don't know why my daughter took a liking to him, but when I suggested to meet the man who showed interest in me and was so different from her father, saying that we only have one life to live, I began to reflect deeply. I wasn't sure if I was making the right decision, but in the end, I agreed to give love another chance despite my initial reservations. He proposed that we have a wedding ceremony. For the first time, I had the opportunity to choose a wedding dress and visit a hotel to see the venue for the celebration. However, he had to attend business commitments for the company and asked me to wait at the hotel. That's when I came face to face with someone I didn't want to see again. My ex-husband was there. What are you doing here? This place doesn't suit you. Look, you're even wearing makeup, my ex-husband said. What does that have to do with you? Both the makeup and my presence here are my business. Please don't worry about me and focus on your business, I replied. My future husband held my hand as we left the hotel. When I asked how he found out about my past, he explained that he had seen a photo of my ex-husband that my daughter had shown him once and decided to investigate. I had no idea he had taken that initiative. After that incident, we had the wedding ceremony, and my daughter and I moved into my current husband's house. My ex-husband insisted on trying to get custody of our daughter, arguing that she needed her father, but our daughter, now of legal age, made it clear that her only father was the man we were living with now. When I think of my ex-husband, who has to live with his mother, I feel like I finally got justice. There's no point in regretting it now. He should have acted kindly while we still had the chance. We are deeply loved by my current husband, and we live a happy life together. My daughter decided to continue her studies abroad, and my husband fully supported her in pursuing her dreams. I am immensely grateful to him and dedicate every day to our relationship. My husband is incredibly kind to me as well.